Morning, everybody.
Hello.
Monday of week 8 of lockdown.
Is it really?
I think it might be. Yeah. So we had an idea.
Yes, we did.
We like to do a Monday chat, and we had an idea. Where's your camera? Which side is it? Is it there? I don't know. Of 3 chats that we could do. Kind of
my origin story. If we're talking about superhero movies.
Basically your origin story. So the story of
I got bitten by a radioactive badger.
Oh, for goodness sake. Feel free to cut this bit out. So one video to today's about how we ended up with Dave's Gym.
Yeah.
And then Dave's Gym the last 15 years. And then Dave's Gym going forwards.
The future.
Which has been interesting because nobody really knows at the moment. But we're hoping that if we do one of these every Monday, by the time we get to Dave's Gym the future, will have got to the end of the next 3 weeks of lockdown, and there might be some more information. Because, I mean, we can't plan at the moment because we have no information. All we know is that Dave's Gym needs to continue.
It will continue.
To be continued.
To be continued.
This is kind of a movie themed. Okay, so origin story.
Yeah. I've always been obsessed with muscles. I mean, yes, fitness, yes, martial arts, but for me it was muscles, and it was comic books that got me first into this. I think I was probably about 6 or 7, and we were in newsagents and they had the stands of comic books there, and it was the Marvel DC ones.
They don't even have kids' weekly comics anymore. The Dandy and the Beano and things.
But for me, I got those, but I was less interested. For me, it was always the superhero comic books. And the first one I remember, and it might not have been my first one, but the first one I remember was an Incredible Hulk one, which, if you're going to talk about muscles, he's on the most.
He is.
And I pestered Mum to get me the comic book, and I read it from cover to cover a million times, except I didn't, because I was 6, maybe 5. So it was just the pictures. But I was fascinated with the muscles, the anatomy, the sort of the physiques of the people in them, and that was my first fascination, absolute fascination. Anything with muscles, I was really interested. Amazed it didn't turn out gay, to be honest with you.
And because your family aren't, like your parents aren't great exercisers. I know your mother used to dance, but there was no gym going history or...
Dad was in the military for 9 years, and enjoyed doing physical stuff. He's a very physical person, my dad. He's always doing stuff, but exercising for the sake of exercising, no. But my grandfather he had a set of weights back in the days when no one had sets of weights, and the old Indian clubs. I may even have had kettlebells before anybody knew what they were, and the chest expanders with springs on.
Oh God, yeah.
But he was part of a movement called physical culture, PC, the PC movement, which isn't what it is now. Physical culture was what bodybuilding came out of. And physical culture was all about, perfecting yourself mentally and physically. So it was a lot of calisthenics, a lot of waving Indian clubs around, a lot of eating what even then was very clean, Spartan food. My grandfather boxed bare knuckle. He was
he was a coal miner in the northeast, so he had a very physically demanding job already.
He was a coal miner from the age of, I think, 11 or 12. And he was down in the mines as I think they were called trap boys, and they were the young lads that sat in pitch black darkness up to their waist in freezing cold water, and they used to open the doors between one tunnel and the next just so the gas didn't spread throughout the entire place. And he was a coal miner until they shut the coal mines down, and then he worked for a steel company, but he was for his entire working life, up until he retired at 65, he was the furnace stoker. So he was a shovel and coal and a blast furnace in an open-sided warehouse that was beyond red hot to his front and beyond freezing cold at his back.
Because it was the northeast.
It was the northeast. And he just threw tons and tons of coal into a blast furnace all day long to melt the steel. And did that during the war. It
was a protected occupation, wasn't it?
It was. He tried to join the army about 20 times, apparently. But they kept on turning him down because he was a protected worker. He was making steels, munitions. His steel mill was bombed. And stories about him on the way to work having to pick up legs and arms from people that were sort of devastating the blast, and carried on. So he was obsessed with physical exercise. I definitely got it from there. On my mum's side, I don't think anybody's ever broken sweat ever, from an exercising point of view. But for me, it was the aesthetic first. It was the muscles. I wanted to look like that. And I remember asking my dad, like, how did these guys look like that? And he was like, well, they exercise, they lift weights, they do press-ups. And I think from that day I started exercising. So it was superheroes for me at first. And I collected what comics we could get in the UK, which was a bit sporadic. And I remember they cost, at the time when I was getting pocket money, this is a couple of years later, I remember they cost 12 pence a comic. And it's how I literally learned how to do my 12 times table.
How many comics could you buy?
How many comics could I buy?
Practical maths.
Practical maths. So I love the stories, I love the colours, I loved all the action and adventure, but more than anything else, I loved the aesthetic. I really, really did. Just how these men and women looked, and I wanted to look just like that. And then we moved to Brazil.
So you were sort of doing like press-ups and stuff in your garage kind of thing?
Little bits and pieces. No, actually at that age, you know what, I wasn't. I was reading the comics, but when I was 10, we moved to Brazil. My dad, after the army, he worked for an oil company, and they had a contract out in Brazil, which was a 3-year contract, and we lived in Rio de Janeiro for 2 years, and then a year up in a town further up north called Salvador, both of them on the coast. And Brazil was very interesting. It was an outdoor life. It's 1,000,000 degrees, hot as hell. And the first like apartment complex we lived in had a pool. And so as kids, you were just always at the pool. But to get there was, we lived on the 9th floor. And then this apartment complex was built on top of quite a steep hill. The whole place was called Casa Alta, which means tall house. Big hill in Rio, in Botafogo. And there was a series of stairs to go then down to the pool. Now you could get the lift there, but I always took the stairs and used to run them. And I used to see how many lengths I could do in this circular pool, if you could do lengths in a circular pool. And I had this quartz rock that I used to just do bicep curls with and shoulder press, and that's when I started exercising. I was in Brazil, and every night before I went to bed I used to do press-ups and sit-ups and anything like that. So yeah, the obsession started really, really young. And you know, you got to remember, I was born in 1970, and so we moved to Brazil in 1980. We were there for 3 years, and there was no television. I think we maybe got a TV for the last year, maybe, but it was Brazilian TV, which was terrible, but interesting, because you couldn't understand what was going on. So I fell into books and Dungeons and Dragons for my entertainment, and just a lot of my own imagination stuff. So I had Star Wars figures when I was out there, and so a lot of it was entertainment in my own head.
So you didn't pick up martial arts when you were in there, because they have they're like capoeira and
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Brazilian
Like,
Jiu-Jitsu.
knowing-
They didn't find you classes now.
Knowing what I know now,
Oh, if only.
just up the road from me was the Gracie dojo.
Oh God.
And if you know anything about martial arts, The world changed in about 1992, 93, can't quite remember, with the UFC. And UFC is cage fighting, Ultimate Fighting Championships. And it was originally pitched as putting martial art A against martial art B. So kickboxer versus sumo wrestler, wrestler versus boxer. And you'd kind of see what happens. And the first couple of UFCs, that was definitely the case. But the guy that won against all these enormous men was this quite slim guy from Brazil called Royce Gracie. And he just took them to the ground and chucked them out, or arm barred them, or knee barred them. And so that changed the world. And the style that he did was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And it was originated
round the corner from your house.
Literally round the corner from my house. I did judo when I was in Brazil for a while. And I was doing my own exercising, and I was fascinated with martial arts. I mean, absolutely fascinated. I'd never seen a Bruce Lee film at that point, but I was obsessed with Bruce Lee already because he was just part of the zeitgeist, part of the culture.
Yeah.
There was always posters and stuff like that of him around.
So you moved from Brazil back to the northeast, and that's where you started your martial arts. Such a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I know. Like
Middlesbrough, Rio de Janeiro.
It was literally just, you've got.
Mind you, they know how to fight in Middlesbrough.
They do know how to fight. So yeah, in Rio you had the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners on the planet right there, right at my doorstep, and I didn't know anything about it. And then for the year in Salvador, you had the home of capoeira. That's where it came from. Capoeira is a Brazilian dance done to musical instruments that has got martial arts put into it. And the story, whether it's true or not, I don't care, was that the slaves that were brought over from Africa were forbidden any form of martial training, just in case they rose up against their Portuguese owners. And so they hid their martial arts in the dance that became capoeira.
And it's very fluid and
it's beautiful
very visually
to watch.
Beautiful.
It is.
We tried a class once and it was hilarious.
Yeah,
we mostly fell over.
Mostly fell
Do you
over.
remember that?
But in
that.
Brazil, especially in Salvador, it was on. We used to go down to the beach, and on the beach you'd have girls in tiny bikinis, which is great as a sort of 12-year-old boy. It's just started.
Then you'd also have grannies in tiny bikinis. Everyone wears tiny bikinis.
Yeah, but everyone was in shape. Every 100 meters along the beach, there'd be a chin-up bar, a sit-up bench, and places you could do dips. You ate meat and fruit, basically. It was meat and fruit for everybody. There was always a big emphasis on physical well-being. Because you lived on the beach in Rio, you had to look good. So that sort of aesthetic was very important. But you'd have guys playing football, guys doing keepy-uppy with a football, guys playing volleyball, but with a football, so using their feet to kick it across the thing. And then there's also this Brazilian sport called peteca, which was using a very heavy shuttlecock and a volleyball net to sort of play that. And again, very physical. And in Salvador, you'd have groups of people playing musical instruments, drums and the berimbau, and doing capoeira. And it was just everywhere. And I didn't do it. So, missed opportunities. So we moved back to the UK. We were in the northeast for a very short period of time, a couple of months, and then we moved down to Stratford. And the reason for that was Mum and Dad just didn't want us in the northeast at the time, and it's not got, sadly, much better.
That was Dave and his two sisters.
Yeah, me
Joe,
and two sisters.
who's a couple of years younger, and then Nikki, who's
Your
10 years younger, my age.
And Mum and Dad didn't want us to settle in the northeast at the time. In the sort of early 80s, it was the start of Arthur Scargill and the miners' strikes.
Really
and if you know anything about the northeast of England, it's coal and steel. That's all there was. And ICI had a big plant there, and it was just all being shut down. And my parents could see the writing on the wall. They were like, let's just move. We've been in Brazil, we've got the money. Let's move to a more affluent area. And so we settled on Stratford-on-Avon for no other reason than that's where they had the honeymoon. In a hotel that's literally around the corner from your
About
house.
100 metres from where I grew up.
Yeah, it's not a hotel anymore, I think
No,
it's flats now.
apartments now.
But yeah, they had the honeymoon there. So it's odd how these sort of things in a sliding doors kind of way come together.
Very much.
So yeah, Stratford. And in Brazil I'd gone to school, but there were international schools. So although you had grades, I was in grade 7 when I left Brazil, I think, maybe grade 8, I can't remember. There wasn't a junior school, senior school, high school kind of thing. We were just all in school, and everybody, those small schools, very small amount of students. I think there was 7 or 8 people in my class.
It was an American international school that you went to, so you came back quite far ahead of your year group, didn't you?
I did, and coasted on that.
Which is probably just as well, because you did no bloody work for the remainder of your school career.
No, none at all. Yeah. So came back to UK, moved down to Stratford, went into high school for the first time. A big school. I mean, it's not a big school, Stratford-on-Avon.
It's sizable.
But,
about 1,200 pupils.
About 1,200 pupils, but it was big for me for the last sort of 3 years.
I remember looking around Stratford High when we were looking to move to the area. You may or may not have still been there at the time, but I remember walking around Stratford High School going, I don't want to go here. It was knackered and run down, and the uniforms were brown, so everyone looked like, it just looked awful. I remember I was only 8 when we moved to Stratford. You might have just left, but the school would have been the same, and it was just, it's horrible.
If it was brown when you had a look around, it might have been that I was still there, because I was on the cusp of when they changed from the brown uniform to the standard blue navy uniform. Anyway, moved to Stratford-on-Avon, and we had a nice house with a big double garage and an enormous 1.5 acre back garden.
Going down to the river, Tiddington Road?
No, I was on the opposite side.
Oh, okay.
I was on the river side. I was on, as you're going up.
The Loxley side?
Yes. Enormous 1.5 acre fields of a garden. And that became my playground. I had a dog, Abby, black Labrador like Jim, and I spent all my time in that back garden and in the garage exercising. So that's when I got really obsessed. And it's also when I started to get books and magazines about it.
Did you say your dad bought you some dumbbells that you used to keep in there? When was that?
I had a few little bits of gym equipment. It was martial arts I got into first. So I did kung fu and karate and boxing. And my martial arts story is quite interesting as well. I might get into that on another podcast, but this one's more about how we got to Dave's gym. But we'd been in Stratford for a while, and I wanted to lift weights. And in Stratford, back in the early 80s, there wasn't any gyms. Even the leisure centre didn't have a gym part to it at all. Like, there was nothing.
I mean, 80s is the rise of aerobics, isn't it? Mr. Motivator, for want of a better idea, on morning TV, and supermodel workout videos, late 80s, early 90s.
All of that.
We used to have a Cindy Crawford one.
Well, that's a little later, but the same sort of thing. But the sort of Jane Fonda type stuff. I wanted muscles. I wanted to be big and strong and muscular for whatever reason. And it was initially really just so I could look like a superhero. It wasn't to get.
Did you wear your pants on the outside of your trousers?
Constantly. It wasn't to get the girl. That kind of came later, definitely. But it was because that's what all girls are interested in, isn't it? Just muscles.
Yes, darling.
Yeah,
absolutely.
At some point I managed to pester mum and dad long enough to get from a K's catalogue.
Oh.
Yeah, a set of weights, and it was a barbell and some plates. Not the Olympic bar that we use now, that were kind of these thin bars with shitty collars and cast iron weights, but that was my first weight set, and I trained all the time. They eventually relented because I was obsessed and let me have the double garage, which I converted into a gym, and even started training people to the point where on certain PE lessons, the PE department let me bring groups back to the gym. I used to run them from the mile-and-a-half run.
I'd say that's quite away from the high school.
Yeah, mile-and-a-half run back to my garage to do a session in the gym and then run back. I think.
So you were like 13 to 15, 16?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, 13 to 16. And trained and did martial arts and went for runs with the dog. And I lived and breathed physical exercise.
And you did all the sports at school. You were captain of the football team even though you didn't like it.
Yeah, football I was not very good at. Rugby I was better at. But I was just super enthusiastic in any kind of physical thing.
Highly, debilitatingly competitive.
Yeah, I mean less so now, but it's still.
I think only because age and your hip has slowed you down.
It's very true. But yeah, super competitive. But that's what it takes to be good at.
Anything. No, I'm just saying that's probably why you were good at things you didn't particularly enjoy, like football. And if you weren't brilliant at it, whatever you do, you have to beat your opponent, whether that's kicking a football or bench press. So I imagine your sheer bloody mindedness and determination to win made up for any perhaps foot skill shortfall.
Yeah, I've never been
ball sports.
Good at football, but
none of us
I
are
was
team players.
Super
actually,
enthusiastic. I enjoyed rugby, but only because it's violent. And again, it wasn't particularly good, like skilled, but was big and strong and fit, and that counted. So at school, I'm born in October, which makes me one of the sort of oldest in the year, and so I was one of the tallest, and I had already, after a couple of years of press-ups and kung fu and boxing, a physique. I mean, I look back at pictures now, and it's hilarious. I look so skinny. But compared to other 14-year-olds,
you were skinny with muscles as opposed to just skinny.
Yeah, I was athletic, and I enjoyed being big. I enjoyed the confidence it gave me, being big, fit, and strong, and I enjoyed the protection it gives you as well. There was just a layer of people that wouldn't mess with you because you were big and did boxing and kung fu, as it was back in the day.
And then kind of after that, it was the Marines, wasn't it?
Yeah. So
at
some point, we had the conversation about what are you going to do with your life, son, with Dad, and I was like, I have literally no idea at all. There's nothing. I hated school. That's not true. I liked being at school. I hated the lessons. I've always been very curious and wanted to learn stuff, but on my terms, and they weren't teaching me anything that I wanted to learn.
Nothing that you valued at the time.
And the lessons were shit, and there was teacher strikes on all the time. And we were being taught in a decaying building by teachers that couldn't give a shit. I just didn't want to be there. And like 80% of all the other boys, I think, probably 40% of the girls. I just wanted to get out. But I had no idea what to do. But I knew it had to be something physical, something I could do. And so my dad was just like, join the army. Because he's ex-army, he was in the Royal Signals for 9 years. And so I remember talking to him about it, and he was explaining the differences between the different services, and he talked about the Air Force, and he talked about the Navy, and he talked about the Army in a lot more detail, because that was his experience. And then he mentioned the Royal Marines, and they just seemed like supermen. And he was like, it's the hardest.
Yeah, it's the most challenging.
It's the most challenging. And the second he said that, I was like, I'll pick that. And so then my training had a purpose. I was not training for a competition, a rugby match, or a fight, which I still did. I was training to get into the Marines. And so I ran and ran and ran and ran and ran, and did press-ups and chin-ups and
ran some more.
And then got accepted, went down to Lympstone in Devon, near Exeter and Exmouth, and had a real shock, because I had spent 3 years in Brazil on the golden beaches of Rio de Janeiro, and then in nice middle class Stratford-on-Avon, in a nice house with an acre of land, and all of a sudden I was in the Marines with a bunch of tough men. And I was a soft boy.
And you were young when you signed up.
Yeah, I was young.
You joined when you were 16.
Yeah, 16, yeah. And so I was young and soft and desperately missed home. Not homesick, but home for what home meant, just that kind of safety. And so, yeah, I really struggled, but made it through and got my Green Beret and did all the stuff. And the great thing about the Marines was if you show any promise at all, or even just dogged enthusiasm for a sport, then they want you to do that because it's the greatest advertising tool for their organisation there is. So I played rugby for them, but like third tier down, but I boxed. And so I boxed for the Marines team for about a couple of years.
And what did they call you?
Well, my nickname was Yo-Yo because the first fight I ever had, it was actually at Limston, so we're still in basic training. And in boxing with rules, there's something called the 3 knockdown rule, which if you get knocked down 3 times, either in a round or just across a fight, they stop the fight. But this was...
Not so much in the Marines.
Well, not so much in the Marines, as may come as a surprise. And so I got caught with a punch in the first like 15, 20 seconds of this fight that caught me just behind the ear. And it put me on Queer Street. Like my legs literally turned to rubber. I was conscious and compos mentis. I could speak. I wasn't dazed and confused and stunned, and I've had that in fights. But this one, my legs went, and spaghetti legs. I couldn't stand up. And so every time I stood up and the guy's punch went near me, I fell down again. And I think in that first round, I was put on my ass like 15 times. Just on the floor, get back up, on the floor, get back up. And there was 1,000 people there watching this. The sports hall was just packed. All the troops, all the training staff, all the people that were just serving from there. And I just got knocked down again and again and again and again and again, up and down, up and down, up and down. And so yo-yo. But boxed. I won that fight because my legs got back together in the either the second or third round, and I stopped him. So I boxed, and which is a Marine thing, and then you're allowed to do sports out of that as well. So I got into kickboxing as well. And so when we used to travel around, used to try to find kickboxing clubs and sort of train from that. And we did weights when we could. The gym at the Marines base was okay. It was still quite multi-gym type stuff back then in the 80s. But there were some free weights there. But you run ragged. You know, you're doing hours of physical exercise all day, up a hill, carrying a man on your back. So there wasn't much energy left over for sort of extracurricular stuff, but I still fitted it in. After I left the Marines, there was a bit of time, but I opened my first gym in Stratford-on-Avon. I was 21 years old, which is stupid. And it was called Just a Gym.
It was you and Nige, wasn't it?
Yeah, Nige sort of worked for me, kind of.
Ish. As much as Nige has ever worked for anyone.
And I was working at the Hilton. They had a little gym there, which is called the Metropolitan Club at the time. I can't remember what it's called now, but it's still there. Yeah. It's still there. And so it was a little gym, and I was working there. And it was definitely a hotel gym that other people were allowed to use, more like a spa. So there's a little swimming pool and a sauna and a steam room and a jacuzzi and nice changing rooms and a little gym with maybe a couple of dumbbells in it, but no free weights. But there was the leg extension, the leg curl, and the bicep curl machine. So I was working out there, and I got chatting to a lady who worked at the college, who they wanted to run a course that was starting to train gym instructors, and they were going to put a gym in it, but nobody had a clue what to do.
Did you have your gym instructor's qualification by then?
Yes, I did.
You did?
Yeah, I got that very shortly after the Marines. And before I started working at the Metropolitan Club. And I can't remember if I worked anywhere else before. God, so long ago.
So they asked you to put one in, did they, at the college?
Well, yeah, good God, 1980s, you got to love it. Well, actually, it was early 90s then. It was it was 90s. And I said, I'll put a gym in. And the college turned around and went, okay, because we haven't got a clue what to do. So here's a room, which they'd already done some work to.
It was tiny.
It was tiny, but there was changing rooms, a little reception desk.
That was on the left as you went in, wasn't it?
Yeah,
And then
that's
had
right.
all the stair climbers and stuff on the
Yeah,
right-hand
and
side.
then there was even a little sauna there, believe it or not.
Yeah, there was.
And then there was the gym, which was about twice the size of a normal living room.
Yeah, it was minute.
Yeah, it was tiny. And they had a few old pieces of multi-gym style equipment in there. And there's like, ta-da, here's your gym if you want to run it. And I was like, do you mind if I buy some more equipment? And they went, absolutely not, go for your life. So I bought a squat rack, a bench press, dumbbells up to 50 kilograms, adjustable bench, and put free weights into it. And it was the first free weights gym in Stratford-on-Avon. And it was immediately busy and popular because there was nowhere else to train. And Stratford itself is a small town.
It's a small market town.
Yeah.
Historical.
But it's got villages spread for 20 miles in a radius and a circumference around it that of course have nothing in them. Some of them don't even have a pub.
Yeah.
So if you're living in Lower Quinton,
Yeah.
which is a small,
Or indeed Upper Quinton.
or indeed Upper Quinton, and you want to train in a gym, then you had to get to Stratford. You know, there wasn't another choice. And so, yeah, it became immediately sort of busy, but I didn't want to run a gym. I just wanted to train with my mates. So I ran that for, I think I had it at the college for either 1 or 2 years. I can't remember. And then I moved it out to the Mansley Centre, which is next to that call centre place that you used to work at.
By Hotel, Timothy's Bridge Road.
Yeah, Timothy Road.
Oh, okay.
There's a place next door to it called the Mansley Centre. Mansley Centre, can't remember. And I sort of put it in there, and we got even more kind of serious and free weighty there.
I think, because I remember Just a Gym, but I don't think it was, I think it was after you'd left.
Yeah.
Because I remember the layout of it and things like that. So that's another area where you and I missed each other.
Yes.
You know.
I mean, you would have been 12.
I would have been,
wouldn't have looked at you sideways.
No, it's just odd.
It is very odd. And yeah, so I moved out to the Manchester Centre. Then my dad, who was working in Libya at the time, said he's setting up a new division of this company, and there's work going. Would I be interested? And the money was too good to say no. So I re-qualified as an NDT technician, which is non-destructive testing. Pure nepotism. My dad got me the job and lied.
That's kind of in line with Libya, generally though.
Yeah, 100%. And I didn't deserve that job or do anything to earn it, but I got it anyway. All the courses that I went on, there's a welding instructors course, welding inspectors course that I had to do down in Cambridge that we just blagged. And it's for someone who's been welding for 10 years, and I've still never really welded in my life, but I had to be a welding inspector. And Dad just gave me books like this of just dense metallurgy reports and the effects on arcing with tungsten inert gas, and he's like, learn all this.
And then come out to the desert.
And then pass the exam. And then we'll send you up to Lavenders, which is in, I can't remember if it was Leeds, Sheffield way, to do your radiography, which is taking X-rays of metal pipes with gamma radiation. Really dangerous. And again, just lied and got me on the course, and he says, as long as you learn all this stuff about radiation and pass the exam, you'll be fine. So somehow scrape that. I'm not an academic beast, but I've got a steel trap memory. I remember stuff. So as long as I could read the books, I'd then be able to regurgitate it. God, we have to learn like what the inverse square law is and the decay rates of Iridium 192. And
but you ended up in the desert in Libya,
yeah,
in the middle of nowhere, living in a container, trying to exercise.
Yeah, that's the thing. So oil companies are weird. When it's very cowboy life. When you're there in the middle of the Sahara Desert, there's no one to help you. And so as long as you sort of show willing, you can kind of get involved in all sorts of stuff. So I had my job to do, which rarely involved having to work much because of the nature of it. And so there's a lot of free time. But you're in the middle of the desert. But I was a welding inspector, and I had access to all the metal on Earth that we used to sort of make tank farms out of and pipelines that stretch 1,000 kilometers. And so I just used to get all the mainly Thai and Filipino welders just to make me stuff.
It's like if Mad Max had a gym.
Oh God, it was exactly that. we had weights with holes cut through with grease paint on probably 10 kilos, which on the outside of it, 15-ish, might be 20. Yeah, we made our own gym. And I probably got weirdly into about the best shape I've ever been when I was out in Libya, because it was 6 weeks of no distraction at all. There was no girls, there was no alcohol. The food was terrible, but actually nutritious.
Clean, yeah.
It was clean. It was meat and rice and vegetables.
I don't think that deliveries for us.
No.
It's a shame.
And
nothing else to do.
And nothing else to
apart
do.
from read the books that you took out with you.
Yeah, books. I used to read. I used to work. I used to train.
So were you still trying to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger at this point? Is that what you were after? Because Arnie was another big.
Oh my God, yeah. Arnie, we've got a delivery.
I'm going to sort that out now.
Okay,
I'll
keep waffling. They're probably here to take the cooker away.
Oh, could be, yeah.
So yeah, out in Libya, I was still, when I used to come back to the UK or Thailand, I used to go to, I used to still fight. So I used to use my 6 weeks out in Libya as a training camp. So I could train twice a day. There was some big Polish boys that used to work there as well, and some Croatians. We had lots of Poles and Croatians that used to work there, and one of them, Roman, big Olympic judo guy, like literally Olympic judo and sprinter. Used to hold the pads for me, and we used to train with him. He was ungodly strong, really nice guy. And there's a Croatian lad whose name I can't remember now, who was quite a high level martial artist. And then we had the Thais as well. And so I used to train for fights.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. So you'd get some Thai boxing training.
Yeah,
from them as well.
a little bit. And I used to sort of train to then come back to the UK or to Libya or to Thailand to fight. So I used to use Libya as a training camp.
And then when you got your 3 weeks off, you go to Thailand and fight in the camps.
Fight and then get drunk.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so that was good. It was another crossover between us was I used to train. This is before the Marines, but I kept a relationship with them afterwards as well, with a guy called Colin Treasure.
Yeah. Oh.
So Colin Treasure still is a fantastic martial artist, and at the time he was a world champion active fighter. Brilliant kicks, like ridiculous kicks. And him and his organisation, which was led by a guy called Howard Brown, who I think had to go to prison for a bit. Yeah. And there was Cash the Flash Gill, and the Birmingham was a massive hot spot for really high level martial arts. Before even the kickboxing came off, the Lau Gar Kung Fu team were pretty much the best point fighters in the world. You know, Kevin Burton and Neville Ray and Mark Aston and sort of people like that, Alfie Lewis, who were just these world-class athletes that were on my doorstep, and I used to train adjacent to. They were always light years ahead of me.
I went to Colin Treasure's kids karate classes where he just let 15-year-old boys kick me in the stomach until I cried.
Made you the woman you are now, though.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan.
No?
No.
Yeah, I liked Colin, he was good. And a great martial artist. And of course, like, he was, you know, he's a fighter. Yeah. So you saw getting kicked literally a part of it. Maybe it doesn't translate to small girls.
Yeah.
And then...
So you came back from Libya, because you just had enough, really, hadn't you?
Yeah, I had enough. 4 years, had some money, and just wanted a life. Because it was 6 weeks there of where you...
And like, there was no internet.
No.
So like these days, you can Skype home.
No, there was nothing.
But there was nothing.
No phone literally
calls.
In the middle of the Sahara Desert. Often hundreds and hundreds of kilometres away from the nearest anything. And so you're just sort of stuck there. And that's okay, because you had the money. And then the time off, I used to just rage.
Yeah.
And really enjoy myself. But it wasn't sustainable. So left.
And that's when we met, basically.
Yeah, came back to Stratford. Had 30 jobs.
Yeah.
But one of them was working in the local leisure centre. By that point, they'd got a gym together. I mean, it's still
mostly cardio, wasn't it?
Mostly cardio and some machine weights, a couple of dumbbells, but no free weights. But I was working there.
But then Jason had his gym by then,
which
had picked up that free weight side of things a
little bit. And there was just me, and James Wall was working there.
Yeah.
And
Sarah, your boss.
And Matt Shepherd.
That grumpy blonde lady.
No, not Sarah.
She was working at the leisure centre when we met.
Anyway. But yeah, Matt Shepherd was still in contact with. He was working there as well. And Dan. Dan, I can't remember your surname, it's escaped. But
he's probably not watching.
He messaged me recently, actually. Dan Lamb.
Oh, okay.
And so we became, there was a really tight little unit. We used to sort of work together, train together, go out and get drunk together. And it's when I met you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd done my A-levels and was originally going to go straight to Cardiff University. But at the time, the part of the BBC that my mum and dad both worked for was in the process of being privatised, and it was unsure whether they'd stay in the Midlands, if the business would stay in the Midlands, or if it would be moved down to the south coast. So I decided to take a year out and work, just to get some money together, see where everything ended up. And at the end of my year out, so I was 19, towards the end of my year out, I decided I'd join the gym. Then I changed my mind and cancelled it, but they kept taking the money. So I went down to the reception desk and said, look, I cancelled and you've taken 3 months worth of money. And they said, can't really give you a refund, but you can have 3 months membership for free. And I thought, well, all right, fine. I'm off to university in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that. But why not, whatever. And I then had to have an official gym induction, like health and safety, how to use the machines. And it was Dave that did my gym induction.
What were your first thoughts?
At some point in our relationship, Dave said to me, what did you first think of me when you first saw me? Like, you know, most people have this conversation. I don't know what you were expecting, but I remember Dave coming out. There was like double doors from the gym corridor into reception, so I was waiting there. And these double doors opened, and the biggest man I'd ever seen in my life walked towards me, and you know, you had like these uniform polo shirts. It was obvious you were the gym instructor
Three sizes too
that
small.
was coming to find me. And I just remember thinking, he's going to kill me. I didn't think, oh, isn't he handsome? I thought, I'm actually going to die. Yeah, and I think during that first induction, I fell off the back of the treadmill.
Well, yes.
Anyway, so that's how we met. I think we're going to have to leave it there. Look, that's 45 minutes of blather. And I think we'll have to do the next podcast for the move to Cardiff.
Okay.
Because it's my fault he moved to Cardiff.
Yeah, so we'll leave off with us meeting for the first time and you failing to remember to walk when you press start on a treadmill.
And me asking him out and him saying no.
It's true.
Yeah, rude.
So rude.
Should have listened. I should have listened.
Anyway.
That was a lot longer than we thought.
Not really. I talk forever.
You do talk forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll pick up next time from moving to Cardiff and the rest of our lives.
Lives.
Yeah, next Monday.
Next Monday.
See you soon.
See you soon. Bye-bye. Love you.